because state never changes. So let's make it change. You never just change state directly. Outside of the constructor, you'll never say this.state.something equals something else. You never reassign it directly because that will not force the page to redraw, which is something that we want to make sure happens. It's kind of the whole point. The whole point of React is keeping your UI in sync with your data. And it does it for you automatically. We don't have to do it in an imperative way like we did last week. But that means we have to use it properly. So never set state directly outside of the constructor. Always use this.setState to change it. So that's what we'll do. But first, let's add a button on the page that's going to do that for us. Let's throw a button on here. Change name or update name, whatever you want to say. Update name. Where the heck's my button? Got an error. Adjacent JSX elements must be wrapped in an enclosing tag. What does that mean? No, I did. Adjacent JSX elements, these two are adjacent to each other, must be wrapped in an enclosing tag. So, yeah, at least it seems like I need a div around these two. Why? Well, would this make any sense in a regular old function? Return the string pancakes and the number 4. That doesn't make any sense, right? Can't just put two things next to each other and have that be the return value. But that's what we're basically trying to do up here. We were saying return these two things. Now you need to return one thing. And that can have stuff nested in it. But so basically what we were trying to do before was this. That doesn't make any sense. We need to return exactly one element. Now it can have other elements in it. Those will just be arguments to it. But you always have to return a single element. Yep. So, cool. Now we have our button. No. No, it's just like any other function. If you do that, only as soon as it returns once, it's done, right? So as long as you had like branching in there, you could, but it's generally not recommended. So we need a method that's going to change state. So let's just write a method called update name. And I said we cannot just say this.state.name equals something else. Instead, we have to call this.setState. That way state will get updated and it will trigger a refresh of the page or a redraw of the portion of the page that actually changed. So you pass setState an object containing the properties that you want to change in state. It doesn't have to be an entire new state object. It just has to contain the properties that you want to change. Any that you don't include here will not be changed. They won't be blown away or anything. So if we had meals here, but we only changed name here, meals isn't going to get blown away or set to null. If we wanted to do that, we would have to pass meals null like that. It's just not going to touch meals. So set state, change the name to Kelly. And then we want to call this method when the button is clicked. So in the world of React, we don't do add event listener anymore. That's a DOM method, and we're not actually messing with the DOM ever again. We're doing things that kind of seem like they're messing with the DOM, but React's going to do all the DOM messing for us. All we do is write some dang JSX. So we do it through props. And props look like HTML attributes. So on this button, we're going to put onClick. That is a capital C, and it must be a capital C. React is very consistent about the camel case. In JavaScript, onClick is lowercase c. Here, uppercase C. OnClick equals, and then you just set it to the method that you want to run. So props are basically like arguments to your components. It's the only way to get data into a component from the outside. And for right now, the fact that this is being passed into button is kind of not the point. But props can have two kinds of values. Well, actually, they can have any kind of value, but they can be separated into two things. Strings, which can just go in quotes like normal HTML attributes, or any other JavaScript expression, which you have to put inside curly braces. In this case, we want it to be a function, this dot update name. So that has to go in curly braces. Yeah.
If you wanted to do quotes inside curly braces, could you?
Quotes inside curly braces, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you can do that. Which sometimes you want to do because you want to use templates, backticks.
Makes sense.
Yep. All right. Cool. So this should totally work, right? Why is nothing happening? Yes. Because, why do we need an arrow function?
We should know what this is.
Yeah. Because of this, right? This isn't what we think it is. Right? So ordinarily, in a method of a class, this will be set to the object itself, the instance of the class. Unless it's handling an event, right? And then it'll be the target of the event. Unless it's a React event, and then it'll be null. Point is, it's not what we want it to be, and we need to make it what we want it to be. We can solve this one of several ways. One way, the way we've used before, just put an arrow function inside the curly braces and have that call update name. Totally works. Hi. Hello, Kelly. Yes. Another way, a way that usually comes up in class but didn't this time, so I never mentioned it, is using bind. So if you have a function object, you can call bind on it, and then when that object gets passed around, the value of this will just travel with it. So it doesn't matter how it's being invoked now. The value of this is always going to be whatever the value of this was on line 20 there. So that's another way to do this. But that we would have to remember to do every time we ever call this method, which kind of stinks. Same with the arrow function. We'd have to remember to do it inside an arrow function every time. So if we had more than one button that did the same thing, that wouldn't be super convenient. So another common way, you notice I keep backspacing over these. I'll just tell you right now I'm going to backspace over the next one too. This is not how we're going to do it. But a very common way, if you see other people's React code, super common, inside the constructor, just take all your methods and reassign them to themselves. This dot update name equals this dot update name dot bind this. So if I do that once in the constructor, now every time I say this dot update name, it's the version of update name that actually has the value of this bound to it. So I can click it again, and yes, it still works. But that's goofy. But till not too long ago, that's how we had to do it, if we wanted a convenient way. But there's a very recent addition in JavaScript, last couple of years. It's still not quite part of the standard, but it is like stage 3 out of 4 for having a new thing added to the standard. That means it will be added, but it probably won't be until next year. But it is supported by Babel, safe to use as long as you're doing that compile step. And that's called a property assignment inside an object. And what that means is you can do things like this. You can just say outside of any method, state equals that, and it'll be the equivalent of saying this dot state equals that inside the constructor. So yeah, you don't actually have to set state inside the constructor sometimes, but we're going to for right now. But that also means you can do that for methods. So instead of writing a method update name, what if I said update name equals an arrow function? Totally works. So that's how we're going to do it from now on. When we write a method, we're just going to make it an arrow function. The difference between that and a regular method is just that much. Just add the equal sign, add the arrow. And the value of this will just be bound to it, and we'll follow it everywhere it goes. So down here, we don't need an arrow function anymore. Just write it as an arrow function the first time, and our this problem is solved. Would I lie to you? Yeah, but I didn't this time. Do you have a question, Catherine?
Yeah, so when you write it in arrow function, when you define it, is that when you call it later, is that like saying it isn't an arrow function? Like, is it, if we, right now we wrote it as if, like, the this dot update now,
Mm-hmm.
we wrote it with an arrow function, but if you define it with an arrow function, does that mean that it's regular?
I'm not sure I quite follow you. So we defined it as an arrow function up here, right? Yeah. So we are setting this dot update name equal to that arrow function. And arrow functions inherently have the value of this permanently bound to them. They're not going to change just because it's an event handler now. So the same reason anonymous arrow functions worked, it's just an arrow function assigned to an object property or a class method. Instance method, actually. So all we really need to know is do it this way, and we never have to worry about this again. There will be some links to that on the notes, right, Dana? About property assignment with the big warning box and stuff? Yeah.
Is that today?
It should be because we covered it, so yeah, cool. All right. Any other questions about that?